Frank Holloway had been standing in that church basement for 42 years. Baptisms, weddings, potlucks, funerals. He knew every water stain on the acoustic tiles, every squeak in the folding chairs. The smell never changed. Old hymnals, green bean casserole, pine sol mopped over linoleum that hadn't been replaced since Carter was president. But he'd never felt smaller than he did right now. His son David's voice carried across the room, loud enough that conversations stopped mid-sentence. "Dad, we need to talk about selling that farm. You can't manage it. Hell, you can barely manage yourself." Frank's coffee cup, styrofoam already cooling, didn't shake in his hand. 40 years of construction work had taught him how to hold steady when everything else wanted to crumble. "Mom's been gone 2 years," David continued. "You're living on TV dinners." The room held its breath. Frank said nothing, but that was only the beginning. Frank had made coffee in his grandfather's percolator that morning, same as every morning since the funeral 3 days ago. The bitter smell filled the kitchen while he stood at the window watching dawn break over 40 acres that were legally his now. Ray Holloway's land, Ray's house, Ray's porch with the third board from the left that creaked when you stood on it. Same spot the old man had stood for 40 years, watching the same sunrise. The will had been clear, simple, even. "To my grandson Franklin Robert Holloway, I leave the farm property at 1847 County Road 12, all structures, all contents, all rights thereto." Not to David, not to anyone else, to Frank. He'd read it 5 times, looking for the catch. There wasn't one. Martha would have loved this, he thought, would have already been planning which rooms to paint, what to plant in the garden come spring. But Martha had been gone 23 months now, and some mornings Frank still set out 2 coffee cups before remembering. He'd put the second cup back in the cabinet. Again, the church basement had been David's idea. "We should gather after the service, Dad. Let people pay respects properly." Frank had agreed because that's what you did. You agreed, you went along, you didn't make waves. 45 years of marriage to Martha had taught him that keeping peace was worth more than being right. But standing there with casserole steam in his face and 20 pairs of eyes suddenly finding the floor very interesting, Frank wondered if maybe he'd learned the wrong lesson. David wasn't finished. "Jennifer and I have been talking to some people, real estate people. The land's worth something, even if the structures aren't." Jennifer, David's wife of 15 years, nodded from beside the dessert table. She wore black, but her nails were bright red, manicured sharp. "We're just trying to be realistic, Frank. This is a lot for one person to handle at your age." At your age, Frank was 67. His back hurt some mornings. Sure, his knees complained on the stairs, but he'd worked construction until he was 64, had swung a hammer 5 days a week while men half his age called in sick. "I appreciate the concern," Frank said quietly. The room leaned in to hear him. "But Ray left the place to me. I reckon he had his reasons." David's jaw tightened. That same look he'd had as a teenager when Frank wouldn't buy him the car he wanted, the clothes his friends wore, the life he thought he deserved. "Dad, be reasonable. What are you going to do with 40 acres? You going to farm it?" David's laugh was sharp. "You can't even keep your own lawn mowed." That wasn't true, but Frank didn't correct him. The lawnmower had broken in August. He'd been meaning to fix it. Time got away from you when you lived alone. Earl Hutchins cleared his throat from across the room. Earl and Ray had been neighbors for 42 years, best friends who didn't need words to understand each other. "Frank's been keeping that place tidy just fine," Earl said. "Stopped by there yesterday. Looks good." Frank hadn't known Earl had been by, but that was Earl. Showed up without announcing, fixed things without being asked, disappeared before you could thank him properly. Jennifer smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's sweet, Earl. But David and I are talking about Frank's future, his quality of life. We want what's best for him." "What's best for me," Frank said slowly, "is what Ray thought was best, and he left me the land." David stepped closer. Close enough that Frank could smell his cologne. Something expensive. Something that didn't belong in a church basement that smelled like decades of covered dish suppers. "We'll talk about this later," David said, "when you've had time to think clearly." He walked away. Jennifer followed, her heels clicking on the linoleum. The conversation started up again. quieter now, loaded with meaning. Frank heard the whispers. Poor Frank. Maybe David's right. He has been lost since Martha. Earl appeared at his elbow. Don't let him get to you. I'm not, Frank lied. Your granddaddy knew what he was doing. Earl's voice dropped lower. There's more to that land than meets the eye. But you gotta be patient. Let things unfold natural-like. Before Frank could ask what that meant, Earl was gone, out the side door into the October cold. Frank drove home the long way, avoiding Main Street, avoiding anyone who might wave or want to talk. The farm looked different pulling up the gravel drive. Not worse, not better, just different. Like something that belonged to him but didn't quite fit yet. He sat in the truck for 10 minutes, engine ticking as it cooled. Through the windshield, he could see the porch, the white paint peeling, the green metal roof that needed patching. The third board from the left. Ray's voice came back to him from that last visit, 2 weeks before the cancer took him. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Frankie. Don't let anyone tell you different. Frank got out of the truck, walked to the porch, stood on that third board and felt it creak under his weight, same as it had creaked under Ray's. Inside, the answering machine was blinking. 3 messages. He pressed play. David's voice. Dad, we need to talk. Call me. Jennifer's voice. Frank, I found some information about property values. You should see this. And a third voice. Someone from the county clerk's office about property taxes. Frank deleted all 3 without listening to the whole messages. He made a fresh pot of coffee, stood at the window as the sun finished setting. Watched the shadows stretch across 40 acres that Ray had walked every morning for 4 decades. Something felt off. Not wrong exactly, just off. Like when you walk into a room and know someone's been there, even though nothing's obviously moved. Frank couldn't shake the feeling that the church basement conversation wasn't over, that it was, in fact, just beginning. The certified mail arrived on a Thursday. Frank had been up since 5:30, same as always. Coffee percolating. Radio playing farm reports on AM 1450. Corn futures, cattle prices, weather that didn't matter much to him anymore, but felt like keeping company with the world Ray had known. He'd walked the fence line that morning, checking posts Earl had helped Ray replace 6 years back. The work was still solid. Cedar posts sunk deep, wire stretched tight. Good work lasted. The mail truck came at 11:15, same as always. But instead of leaving the mail in the box at the road, Betty Carlson came all the way up the drive. She handed him the green certified letter card through the truck window. Need a signature, Frank? He signed. She drove off trailing dust. The return address was a law office 2 counties over. Bracket, Simmons Low, attorneys at law. Frank's hands were steady opening it. That construction worker steadiness that never quite left you. Inside was a will. Ray's signature at the bottom, dated 6 months before he died. Frank read it standing in the driveway, October wind pulling at the papers. I, Raymond Ernest Holloway, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath my property at 1847 County Road 12 to be divided equally among my heirs. Equal shares, not to Frank alone, to heirs. Plural. Frank read it twice. 3 times. The signature looked like Ray's, that shaky script from hands that arthritis had bent sideways. But something about it felt wrong. The loops too careful, the pressure uneven. He went inside, found the first will, the one Ray's lawyer in town had read at the office last week, set them side by side on the kitchen table. 2 wills, same man, different instructions. The phone rang. He knew who it was before he answered. Dad, did you get the letter? David's voice was controlled, careful, practiced. I got something. Then you understand the situation. Granddad changed his mind in those last months. He wanted it fair. Wanted everyone taken care of. This will says it was signed in June. Ray was clear-headed in June. We had dinner that month. He told me, what did he tell you, Dad? That you were special? That you deserved it more? David's voice hardened. Maybe you heard what you wanted to hear. Maybe grief does that. Frank's jaw tightened. Your grandfather didn't change his mind. The document says otherwise. It's notarized. It's legal. And Dad, David paused. Jennifer and I already talked to the lawyer. This supersedes the earlier will. It's the last one executed, so it takes precedence. Ray used Martin Wheeler for 40 years. Why would he go to some lawyer 2 counties over? Maybe he wanted someone objective, someone who wasn't your fishing buddy. David meant Martin, who'd known Frank since high school. Look, we're coming over this afternoon. We need to discuss next steps. I don't recall inviting you. It's family business, Dad. It affects all of us now. The line went dead. Frank sat at the table Ray had built in 1967. Oak, solid, scarred from 50 years of use. He spread both wills out, studying them in the autumn light coming through the window Martha had always kept curtained with yellow gingham. The notary's signature on the second will was Deborah K. Marsh. Frank didn't recognize the name. He called Martin Wheeler's office, got the secretary. Martin's in depositions all day, Frank. Can I have him call you? Tell him I need to see him, soon as he's free. Everything all right? I don't know yet. He hung up, made fresh coffee, stood at the window watching the gravel drive. David's BMW appeared at 2:30, trailing Jennifer's white Lexus. Both cars looked wrong here. Too clean, too expensive, too much like they'd taken a wrong turn and ended up in the wrong century. Frank met them on the porch, didn't invite them in. Dad, come on. David gestured to the door. It's cold. I'm comfortable. Jennifer smiled that smile that wasn't really a smile. Frank, we're not your enemies. We're trying to help navigate a complicated situation. Situation's not complicated. Ray left me the farm. That's what his lawyer says, and that's what I'm going with. David's face reddened. You're going to fight this. You're going to drag the family through legal battles because you're too stubborn to see reason? I'm going to honor your grandfather's wishes. His wishes are right here. Jennifer held up a copy of the second will. Legally executed. Properly witnessed. You can fight it if you want, but you'll lose, and you'll burn through whatever savings you have left on lawyer fees. She paused. How much do you have in savings, Frank, after Martha's medical bills? The question landed like a slap. David stepped forward. Look, we're not trying to cut you out. You'd get your share, a third of the value. That's still significant money. You could buy a nice condo in town, near the senior center, near the church. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance, taxes, all this land you can't use anyway. I can use it. For what? David's patience snapped. You gonna start farming at 67? You gonna run cattle? What exactly is your plan here? Frank didn't have an answer. Not one that would satisfy them. We've already talked to McGrath Realty, Jennifer said. They think we can list at 420, maybe get 450 if the market holds. Split 3 ways, that's $150,000 for you. Clean, simple, no property tax headaches, no upkeep worries. Ray didn't want the land sold. Ray's dead, Dad. David's voice went flat. And you're not being rational. Martha's gone. You're living alone. You're eating frozen dinners and letting the place fall apart. This is the smart move, and deep down, you know it. Something in Frank's chest went tight. Not anger, exactly. Something older and colder than anger. I think you should leave now. Dad. I said, leave. David and Jennifer exchanged a look Frank couldn't quite read. David pulled out his phone, typed something, put it away. We'll be in touch, Jennifer said. Through our attorney. They walked to their cars. David paused at his door. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You're going to lose and it's going to hurt. And for what? Stubbornness? Pride? Frank didn't answer. They drove away, gravel crunching under imported tires. The silence after they left felt heavy. Frank stood on the porch until the sun touched the tree line, painting everything gold and red and dying. Earl's truck appeared just after 5. He got out slow, moved like a man whose bones remembered 60 years of farm work. Saw David and Jennifer leave, Earl said. Looked like it didn't go well. They brought a second will. Earl's face didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Let me see it. They went inside. Earl read it standing at the counter, lips moving slightly. When he finished, he set it down careful-like. This ain't right. You think it's forged? I think Ray wouldn't have gone to some lawyer 2 counties over when Martin Wheeler's been handling his business since before you were born. Earl tapped the notary signature. And I think your boy knew exactly what buttons to push, talking about frozen dinners and falling apart. He's not wrong. Place does need work. Place needs living in. That's different. Earl poured himself coffee without asking, the way old friends do. Ray told me something, month before he died, made me promise not to say anything until the time was right. What'd he say? He said there's more to this land than meets the eye. Said if David or Jennifer came sniffing around with dollar signs in their eyes, I was to help you stand your ground. Help me how? Earl looked out the window at the 40 acres going dark. By reminding you that your granddaddy saw something in you David never did. Said you had the kind of strength that don't holler, just holds. Frank's throat went tight. They're gonna come at you hard, Earl said. They're gonna make you feel small and old and foolish. They're gonna use words like reasonable and realistic and make it sound like fighting back is the crazy choice. He turned to face Frank. But Ray left you this place for a reason, and I gave him my word I'd help you figure out what that reason is. You know something I don't. I know Ray didn't raise no fool, and I know men like David. They count on quiet folks staying quiet. Earl set his empty cup in the sink, headed for the door. Earl, what's on this land? What's Ray hiding? Earl paused on the porch step. Some things a man's got to discover for himself. Otherwise, it don't mean nothing. He looked back. But I'll tell you this. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And don't let them make you believe you don't deserve what Ray gave you. He drove off into the October dusk. Frank stood in the doorway, watching taillights disappear. Inside, the two wills lay on the table like accusations. Outside, 40 acres stretched into darkness, holding secrets Ray hadn't lived long enough to share. And somewhere between the two, Frank felt the ground shifting under him, felt the comfortable certainty of his life cracking like ice in spring. The property tax notice came on Saturday, hand-delivered by Earl, who'd picked it up at the county office, $8,400, due in 60 days. Plus, and this part made Frank's stomach drop, 3 years of back taxes that someone had been paying. Anonymous payments through the county system. Total, another $18,000. That was you, Frank said. Earl shrugged. Ray couldn't manage it those last years. I wasn't going to let the county take it. $18,000, Earl. Money I wasn't using. Land that mattered. Earl set the notice on the table next to the dueling wills. But the county's asking questions now. Wants to know who's responsible going forward. Needs a name on the account. Frank did the math in his head. His construction pension was $1,100 a month. Social Security, another $1,400. He had maybe $8,000 in savings after Martha's medical bills and funeral. I can't pay it, Frank said quietly. Not asking you to, just letting you know the clock's ticking. Earl poured coffee from the pot Frank had made an hour ago. David know about the tax situation? Don't see how he would. He will. Jennifer strikes me as the type who does her research. Frank sat down heavy. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the walls closer. Maybe they're right. Maybe I can't handle this. That what you believe, or what they're making you believe? Frank didn't answer. Earl pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket, old, yellowed at the creases. He spread it on the table, a geological survey map, dated 1953. Your granddaddy showed me this 10 years back. Made me promise not to mention it unless, well, unless things got complicated. Earl's finger traced the creek that cut through the northwest corner of the property. See these marks here? These are mineral deposit indicators. Frank leaned in. The map was covered in symbols, elevation lines, notations in technical language he didn't understand. What kind of minerals? Don't rightly know. Ray never said exactly. Just told me there was something under that creek bed worth more than most folks would guess. Earl refolded the map carefully. Said he was keeping it quiet because once word got out, the vultures would circle. Said he wanted it to go to someone who'd do right by it. Why didn't he tell me? I think he wanted you to find your own strength first. Earl slid the map across the table. Before handing you the sword, Frank stared at the yellowed paper. 50-year-old secrets. Grandfathers playing chess games that outlived them. How do I even figure out what's down there? Modern surveys cost money you don't have. But there's records, public domain geological data, old mining reports, county archives. Earl stood. I got a friend at the state geology department. Owes me a favor from way back. I'll make some calls. Earl, don't thank me yet. This information might not change anything. Might be those deposits were only valuable back in the 50s, might be they're played out or too deep to access economically. He moved toward the door, but it might explain why Ray wanted you to have this place. And it might explain why David's so eager to get it sold quick. After Earl left, Frank sat at the table studying the map. The symbols meant nothing to him, but he could see the creek clearly marked, the same creek where he and Ray had fished when Frank was a boy, where Ray had taught him patience and quiet and how to read water. The phone rang at noon. Martin Wheeler. Frank, got your message. What's going on? Frank explained the second will. Martin listened without interrupting. Can you bring both documents to my office Monday morning, 8 o'clock? That soon? Sooner the better. If there's fraud involved, we need to move before they do. Fraud. The word hung in the air like smoke. You think it's fake? I think Ray was sharp as a tack 6 months before he died. I think he and I went over his estate plan in detail, and he never mentioned changing anything. And I think if he had changed his mind, he'd have come back to me. Martin's voice hardened. I also think your son's lawyer has a reputation for creative paperwork. Frank felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but a crack in the weight pressing down. Martin, I can't afford a legal fight. Let me worry about that. First, let's see what we're dealing with. They hung up. Frank made a sandwich he didn't eat. Walked the property in the October sun, following the fence line to the northwest corner where the creek ran. The water was low this time of year, exposing rocks and muddy banks. Frank climbed down carefully, his 67-year-old knees complaining. The creek bed was littered with stones, nothing that looked special to him. Gray limestone, rust-colored chunks, smooth river rock. He picked up a piece of the rust-colored stone. Heavy for its size. Rough texture. It looked like 1,000 other rocks, but maybe... Granddad, what did you know that nobody else did? The creek answered with its quiet burble. Frank pocketed the stone, climbed back up the bank, walked home as the sun slanted golden through the trees Ray had planted 40 years ago. That night he dreamed of Martha. She was standing in the kitchen, yellow curtains behind her, telling him something he couldn't quite hear. He woke at 4 a.m., heart pounding, reaching for her side of the bed before remembering. Sunday, he went to church, sat in his pew, fourth from the front, right side, same spot for 40 years. The sermon was about David and Goliath. Frank tried to listen, but his mind kept drifting to tax notices and geological surveys, and David's face when he'd said, "You're going to lose, and it's going to hurt." After the service, Helen Pritchard cornered him at the coffee station. Helen had been church secretary for 30 years, knew everyone's business, forgot nothing. Frank Holloway, you look troubled. Just tired, Helen. Bull. She lowered her voice. I heard about the Wills situation. Heard David's making noise about your granddad not being competent. Frank's jaw tightened. Ray was sharp till the end. I know that. You know that. The question is, does a judge know that? Helen glanced around, then leaned closer. Ray came to see Pastor Jim in June. I remember because he scheduled it special, said he needed to talk about making sure things were done right. I wasn't in the meeting, but when he left, he seemed satisfied, like he'd taken care of something important. You remember the date? June 14th. I could pull the calendar if you need it. Would you? Already did. She handed him a post-it note with the date and time written in her precise script. Just in case you needed proof, he was thinking clearly, planning ahead, doing exactly what he intended. Frank stared at the note, June 14th, 2 weeks after the second will was supposedly signed. Helen, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your granddad for being the kind of man who kept his word and expected others to do the same. She patted his arm. And Frank, don't let them make you feel like wanting what's yours is greedy. Ray left you that land because he trusted you. Honor that trust. Frank drove home with the post-it note in his pocket and Earl's map on the passenger seat. At the house, he stood on the porch. Third board from the left. It creaked. For the first time since the funeral, Frank felt something besides weight and loss. He felt possibility, small, fragile, uncertain. But there, Martin Wheeler would look at the wills Monday. Helen had given him ammunition. Earl was making calls about the mineral deposits. And somewhere in the creek bed, under 50 years of water and stone, lay a secret Ray had protected his whole life. Frank didn't know if it was enough, but it was more than he'd had yesterday. And sometimes, he thought, remembering Ray's voice, sometimes that's all a man needs, just enough reason to stand one more day. The sun set red and gold over 40 acres that might be worth fighting for after all. Martin Wheeler's office smelled like old law books and burnt coffee. Frank sat in a cracked leather chair while Martin studied both wills under his desk lamp, reading glasses perched on his nose. "The notary signature bothers me," Martin said finally. "Deborah K. Marsh. I checked the county database. Her stamp number doesn't match any active notary in this county for June of this year." "What's that mean?" "Means either the stamp was transferred illegally or it's fabricated or—" Martin pulled out his phone, typed something, waited. His face went grim. "Or she was a notary in June but let her commission lapse in August. Which makes this technically valid if she did notarize it, but questionable if she stamped it later. Can we prove when she actually stamped it? Not without forensic analysis, which costs money." Martin set the will down. "And here's the other problem, Frank. Even if we prove the notary stamp is hinky, David's lawyer will argue the underlying document is still valid. They'll say it was just a clerical error. The notary corrected it after the fact. No harm, no foul." Frank's hope, so fragile yesterday, started cracking. "So I've got nothing." "I didn't say that. Helen's note helps. Shows Ray was actively planning in mid-June, thinking clearly, meeting with clergy. We can build a competency case. But Frank—" Martin took off his glasses. "This kind of fight costs 10, maybe 15,000 in legal fees, minimum. And that's if it settles quick. If it goes to actual probate court, double that." The number hit like a hammer. Frank had 8,000 in the bank. "Maybe—" "I can't afford that." "I know, which is why I called some colleagues. There's a legal aid program through the Methodist Regional Office. They take cases where elderly folks are being exploited by family members." Martin slid a business card across the desk. "Attorney named Carmen Rodriguez. She's good. Tough. She does this pro bono when the case pisses her off enough." Will this piss her off? Adult son trying to steal his father's inheritance with a questionable will? Yeah, I'd say that'll do it. Martin stood. "I'll send her everything I've got. Meanwhile, don't sign anything David puts in front of you. Don't agree to anything verbal. And Frank, get ready for this to get ugly." Frank left with the business card in his pocket and a weight back on his chest. He stopped at the diner on the way home. Needed coffee. Needed to think. Bad choice. David and Jennifer were in a corner booth with two people Frank didn't recognize. A woman in a real estate blazer, a man with a surveyor's vest. They had papers spread across the table, laptops open, everything looking official and decided. Jennifer saw Frank first. Her expression shifted from surprise to something calculating. David turned. "Dad, join us." It wasn't really a request. Frank walked over. The surveyor closed his laptop. The realtor smiled too wide. "Frank, this is Denise McGrath from McGrath Realty, and Tom Brennan. He's a property surveyor." Jennifer gestured to empty space at the booth. "We're just getting preliminary assessments." "Preliminary," Frank said flatly. "Well, yes. The property has to be surveyed before it can be listed. Standard procedure." Denise's smile never wavered. "David mentioned you might need help understanding the process." "I understand it fine. You're counting chickens before they hatch." David's jaw tightened. "Dad, sit down. Let's talk like adults." "I'm standing." "Jesus Christ." David stood too, voice dropping. "You're really going to do this? Fight reality because your pride can't handle being wrong? I'm not wrong. Ray left me the farm. Ray left his heirs the farm. That's what the legal document says. One legal document says that, the other says different. Tom, the surveyor, gathered his papers, clearly uncomfortable. I think I'll stay, David said. Then to Frank, you talked to a lawyer. It wasn't a question. I did. Jennifer's eyes went sharp. And what did this lawyer tell you? That you could win? That you should burn through your savings fighting us? Told me not to sign anything or agree to anything. So if that's why you wanted me to sit down. We wanted you to sit down, David interrupted. Because we're family. Because we thought maybe we could find a compromise that works for everyone. I'm listening. Denise jumped in, reading from a tablet. Current market value, based on comparable sales, puts the property at $440. We could list at $450, probably settle at $435. Split 3 ways, that's $145,000 each, roughly. And if I don't want to sell, then you buy us out, Jennifer said smoothly. 2/3 of $435 is $290. You pay us that, the property's yours, clear and simple. Frank almost laughed. $290,000. Or we go to court, spend years fighting, burn money on lawyers, and end up in the same place, except we're all broke and bitter. David leaned in. This is the reasonable solution, Dad. The adult solution. The solution where you get what you want. The solution where everyone gets something and nobody loses everything. David's voice dropped lower. I know you think I'm the bad guy here. I know you think I'm being greedy or disrespectful or whatever story you're telling yourself, but I'm trying to protect you. From yourself. From making a mistake that'll leave you broke and alone in a house you can't maintain. There it was again. Broke and alone. Frank looked at his son. Really looked at him. Saw the expensive watch, the designer shirt, the haircut that probably cost more than Frank spent on groceries in a month. Saw a man who measured worth in market values and square footage and things that could be listed, sold, liquidated. Ray didn't think it was a mistake, Frank said quietly. Ray was dying. People get sentimental when they're dying. They make decisions based on emotion instead of logic. Maybe emotion's the right thing to base some decisions on. David's laugh was harsh. That's exactly the kind of thinking that leaves old people broke and bitter. He pulled out his phone, showed Frank a document. This is a settlement offer. You take $75,000 cash, we handle the sale, you walk away clean. No legal fees, no fight, no mess. 75? You just said my share was 145. That was if we split proceeds. This is if you accept a buyout and let us handle everything. The difference accounts for legal fees, real estate fees, carrying costs, risk. Frank stared at the number. $75,000. More money than he'd ever had at one time in his life. Enough to buy a condo, live comfortable, not worry about taxes or maintenance or any of it. Enough to walk away from Ray's legacy and never look back. I need to think about it. We need an answer by Friday, Jennifer said. We're signing the listing agreement Friday morning. You're either in or out. That's 3 days. That's reality. David pocketed his phone. And Dad, if you say no, if you make us go the legal route, I'm not paying your lawyer fees when you lose. I'm not bailing you out when the property gets tied up in probate for years and the taxes pile up and you lose everything anyway. You'll be on your own. They left cash on the table for their coffee and walked out. Denise and Tom followed, throwing apologetic looks back at Frank. The diner went quiet. Frank realized everyone had been listening. Their faces told him what they thought, some sympathetic, some judging, all of them watching an old man make a fool of himself over 40 acres in pride. He sat down in the booth they'd abandoned. The coffee they'd ordered was still warm. Betty Carlson, who'd waited tables here for 30 years, brought him a fresh cup. On the house, Frank. Thanks, Betty. For what it's worth, Ray would have boxed David's ears for talking to you like that. Frank tried to smile, couldn't quite manage it. He drove home in gray afternoon light. The farm looked different now, not like possibility, but like burden, like weight, like a mistake he was making because he was too proud or too stupid to see sense. The answering machine was blinking when he walked in. 4 messages. First, Carmen Rodriguez, the legal aid lawyer. Mr. Holloway, Martin Wheeler forwarded your case. I'd like to meet. Unfortunately, I have to tell you up front, without significant evidence of fraud or undue influence, these cases are tough. Call me. Second, County Tax Office. This is regarding outstanding tax liability on property at 1847 County Road 12. Please return our call at your earliest convenience. Third, David. Dad, I know that was hard, but think about it seriously. Friday. We need an answer Friday. Fourth, heavy breathing, then a click. No message. Frank erased them all. He walked out to the porch. Third board. It creaked. Across the fields, he could see Earl's place. Lights on in the barn, Earl probably working late the way he always did. Frank thought about walking over, thought about calling Martin, thought about a lot of things. Instead, he sat down on the porch steps as the sun set and the temperature dropped and the October wind picked up, carrying the smell of wood smoke and dying leaves. $75,000, or years of legal fighting with money he didn't have. Ray's voice in his memory. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. But strength didn't pay lawyer fees, didn't cover back taxes, didn't make 40 acres manageable for a 67-year-old man living on TV dinners. Maybe David was right. Maybe sentiment was just another word for foolishness. Maybe the smart thing, the adult thing, the reasonable thing was to take the money and let go. Frank sat there until full dark, trying to convince himself. The porch board creaked when he finally stood up. Inside, the house felt empty in a way it hadn't before, like something had shifted, like loss was coming, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. He went to bed without eating. And for the first time since Martha died, Frank Holloway felt like maybe everyone was right. Maybe he really couldn't handle this. Maybe he never could. Frank woke at 3 a.m. Tuesday morning with his phone buzzing. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought, middle of the night calls are never good news. Hello? Mr. Holloway? This is Marcus. Frank's brain took a second to catch up. Marcus, his grandson, David's boy, 28 now, living somewhere out east, Boston, Philadelphia. They hadn't talked in, 3 years? 4? Marcus, it's 3 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry. I needed to call. The voice sounded strained, tired. I heard about Grandpa Ray, about the will situation, about Dad and everything. Frank sat up, suddenly awake. Your father tell you to call me? No. God, no. Dad doesn't know I'm calling. He'd lose his mind if he knew. Then why are you? Silence. Then, because it's wrong. What they're doing. It's wrong, and I can't just... Marcus's voice cracked. I should have been at the funeral. I was supposed to fly in, but work got crazy, and I told myself I'd come later, and then I didn't. And now Grandpa Ray's gone, and I never got to say goodbye. Frank heard something familiar in the boy's voice. Something that sounded like grief he recognized. Your granddad understood about work. No, he didn't. He understood about responsibility and keeping your word, and I broke mine. Marcus took a shaky breath. Look, I don't have much time. Dad thinks I'm on his side, thinks I agree the farm should be sold. But Mr. Holloway, Grandpa Frank, I need you to know something. I'm listening. I work in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, maps, surveys, land analysis. And when Dad mentioned selling the property, I got curious. Started pulling public records, geological surveys, historical mining data. Frank's pulse quickened. What did you find? I found a 1953 geological survey showing mineral deposit markers on that property. I found a 2008 university study on rare earth element deposits in the region, and I found a 2019 private mining company report that got buried in a county database. Marcus paused. Grandpa Frank, there's scandium under that creek bed. Do you know what scandium is? No idea. It's a rare earth metal used in aerospace, electronics, fuel cells. It's worth about $4,000 per kilogram, and based on the geological indicators, there could be a commercially viable deposit on that 40 acres. Frank's hand tightened on the phone. How much are we talking? I can't say for sure without a modern survey. but potentially $4 to $7 million in mining rights, maybe more. The number was so big it didn't feel real. Marcus, I think Mom knows, or suspects. I found her browser history on Dad's laptop. She's been researching mineral rights, rare earth mining leases, property valuations for mineral deposits. That's why they're pushing so hard for a quick sale. If they can get you to sell before you know what's down there, they pocket the value. Or if they force you into a settlement, same thing. Frank's head spun. Why are you telling me this? Because Grandpa Ray left it to you. Not Dad, not Mom, you. Marcus's voice firmed up. And because I remember summers at the farm, I remember you teaching me to fish in that creek, to fix fence wire, to measure twice and cut once. I remember Grandpa Ray telling me that family means keeping your word, even when it costs you something. Your father's going to be furious if he finds out you helped me. Yeah, probably. Marcus laughed, but it sounded painful. But I'm already a disappointment to him. Went to state school instead of Ivy League. Took a government job instead of private sector. Didn't marry the girl he picked out. What's one more thing? Frank felt something shift in his chest. Something like hope, but older, like recognition. What do I do with this information? First, don't sign anything on Friday. Second, I'm sending you files, geological data, survey maps, the university study, everything I found. It'll hit your email in about an hour. Third, Marcus hesitated. I'm coming home. Not forever. Just for a few days. I'll tell Dad it's to help with the estate. But really, I need to see that property with my own eyes. Confirm what I think is there. When? I'm catching a flight Wednesday morning. I'll be there by evening. After they hung up, Frank sat in the dark bedroom that had been Ray's, then became his and Martha's on visits, then became his alone after she died. $4 to $7 million. The number was so absurd he almost couldn't process it. But more than the money, the fact that David and Jennifer knew, or suspected, that they'd been playing him, pushing him, making him feel small and incompetent while they angled to steal what Ray had protected his whole life. Frank got out of bed, made coffee in the dark, watched the sun rise over 40 acres that suddenly felt different again. Not burden, not mistake, battleground. At 6 a.m., he called Earl. Marcus called. He's coming home. And Earl, there's scandium under that creek. Earl was quiet for a long moment. Wondered when you'd find out. Ray told me about it 15 years back. Made me swear not to mention it unless David made his move. You've known for 15 years? Ray wanted you to fight for it without the money being the reason. Wanted you to claim it because it was yours by right, not by greed. Earl's voice softened. He said if you could stand up to David without knowing what was at stake, then you'd earned the right to know. Then you'd be strong enough to handle it. Frank felt something sting behind his eyes. Ray, playing chess games from the grave, teaching lessons he'd never lived to see learned. They're pushing for an answer Friday. What are you going to tell them? Frank looked out the window at the creek, cutting through the northwest corner, innocent and ordinary in the morning light. Looked at the porch where Ray had stood every morning, looked at the land that had held its secret for 70 years, waiting. I'm going to tell them no. That's going to make things harder. Good, Frank said. I'm tired of easy. He spent Tuesday morning cleaning, not because the house needed it, though it did, but because he needed to do something with his hands. He scrubbed the kitchen floor Martha had kept spotless, washed windows Ray had looked through for 40 years, fixed the screen door that had been sticking since August. Small things, dignified things, things that said, I'm not leaving. I'm staying. This is mine. At noon, Carmen Rodriguez called back. Mr. Holloway, I've reviewed your case. I'll be honest, it's thin. The second will look legitimate on its face. Proving fraud is going to be tough. What if I told you the property's worth more than anyone's saying? That there's mineral deposits worth millions? Silence. Then, do you have proof? Not yet, but I will by Friday. Then here's my advice. Don't refuse the settlement outright. Ask for more time. Tell them you need to consult with counsel. Run your own property assessment. Do your due diligence. Buy yourself weeks, not days. They want an answer Friday. They want an answer Friday because they're afraid of what you'll find if you have time to look. Carmen's voice went hard. String them along. Be the confused old man they think you are. Then hit them with evidence when they're not expecting it. That's not really my style. Then maybe it's time to learn a new style because Mr. Holloway, they're counting on you being too nice, too tired, too beaten down to fight smart. Prove them wrong. After she hung up, Frank sat with that. Too nice, too tired, too beaten down. Maybe he had been, for years, since Martha died, maybe longer. But Ray hadn't thought so. Ray had left him 40 acres and a secret and a test. And Marcus, his own grandson, had risked his relationship with his parents to tell the truth. That meant something. Frank made lunch. Actually cooked. Fried eggs, toast, real food. Ate at the table instead of standing at the counter. After, he walked the property again. All 40 acres. Checked every fence post. Followed the tree line. Stood at the creek and looked for signs of what lay beneath. The rocks looked the same as yesterday. Gray limestone, rust-colored chunks, smooth river stones. But now he knew they were more than rocks. They were legacy. They were proof. They were the reason Ray had smiled that last day and said, "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." At 4 p.m., David called, "Dad, have you thought about the offer?" "I'm thinking. We need an answer by Friday." "I heard you. I'm still thinking." "There's nothing to think about. It's math. It's simple." "Maybe I'm not as simple as you think." Frank kept his voice level, calm. "I'm going to need more time, David. I want to run my own assessments, talk to my own people." "Your own people?" "Dad, you don't have people. You have Martin Wheeler and whatever free lawyer you dug up who's going to tell you what you want to hear." "Then I guess Friday's not happening." David's voice went cold. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it'll be my mistake to make." "Fine. You want to play it this way? We'll file the probate challenge Monday. We'll tie that property up in court for years. You'll spend every dime you have fighting us, and you'll lose anyway, and you'll end up with nothing." "Nothing, Dad. Was it worth it? Was your pride worth dying broke and alone?" Frank thought about Marcus flying home, about Earl keeping secrets for 15 years, about Carmen Rodriguez getting angry enough to fight for free, about Ray's hands building this house and Martha's hands keeping it, and all the invisible threads that connected people across time when they actually gave a damn. "I guess we'll find out," Frank said. He hung up. The house settled around him in the quiet. Outside, the sun was starting its descent. The porch board creaked when he walked out to watch. For the first time in 2 years, Frank didn't feel like he was just taking up space. He felt like he was holding ground. And sometimes he thought, that's all a man can do. Hold ground. Make a stand. Say no when everyone expects yes. The evening stretched out. Frank made dinner. Real dinner. Sat at the table and ate slow. After he opened his email, found Marcus's files. Dozens of them. Maps, studies, reports, data he didn't fully understand but could feel the weight of. Evidence. Ammunition. Ray's gift. Finally unwrapped. Frank printed what he could, spread it across the kitchen table, studied it until his eyes hurt. Around 10 p.m., Earl's truck pulled up. Earl came in without knocking, saw the papers, nodded. "So you know." "I know." "What are you going to do?" Frank looked at the old man who'd kept faith for 15 years, who'd paid taxes he couldn't afford, who'd shown up every time without being asked. "I'm going to fight," Frank said. "And I'm going to win." Earl smiled. A rare, genuine thing. Ray would have liked that. They sat at the table until midnight, two old men planning war over coffee and geological surveys. And outside, 40 acres lay dark and quiet, holding their secret a little while longer. Marcus's rental car pulled up Wednesday evening just as the sun touched the tree line. Frank watched from the porch, same spot Ray had watched him pull up 40 years ago, coming home from construction jobs, Martha beside him, life still ahead of them both. The boy who got out wasn't a boy anymore. 28. Taller than Frank remembered. Thinner. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, carried a backpack that looked expensive, city clothes, city bearing. But when Marcus walked up the porch steps, his eyes went to that third board, and he smiled. Still creaks. Still does. They stood there awkward for a moment, grandfather and grandson who'd lost the thread somewhere along the way. Marcus broke first. "I'm sorry I didn't come to the funeral." "You're here now." "Yeah, I am." Marcus looked out at the property. "It's smaller than I remembered." "Everything is, when you're grown." They went inside. Frank had cleaned, but the house still had that empty feeling, like it was waiting for people who weren't coming back. Marcus set his bag down, looked around at furniture that hadn't changed in 30 years. "Smells the same. Coffee and—" He stopped. "Grandma Martha's hand soap. You still use that?" "Haven't bought different. Seemed wasteful when there's still some left." Marcus's throat worked. "I should have come more. After Grandma died. Should have checked on you." "Your daddy kept you busy." "That's not an excuse." Marcus turned to face him. "I let Dad convince me you'd be fine, that you didn't need company, that you liked being alone. I knew it was bullshit, but it was easier to believe it than to make the drive." Frank poured coffee, 2 cups, habit finally paying off. "You're here now. That counts for something." They sat at the kitchen table. Marcus pulled out a laptop, opened files. "Okay, so here's what I know." He turned the screen so Frank could see. Maps, charts, data. The 1953 survey marked this whole creek area as anomalous mineral concentrations. Back then, they didn't have the tech to identify exactly what. But in 2008, a University of Missouri geology team did a regional survey of rare earth elements. They found scandium indicators in 3 places in the county. This property was one of them. Why didn't they follow up? They did, sort of. Marcus clicked to another document. In 2019, a company called Midwest Mineral Resources ran a preliminary assessment. Private company, report never made public. But I found it in the county clerk's database. Someone filed it as part of a land lease application that never went through. Ray knew about this? I think so. The lease application was filed in his name, then withdrawn 2 weeks later. Marcus pulled up a scanned signature. "That's Grandpa Ray's handwriting, right?" Frank studied it. Definitely Ray's script, that careful, arthritic precision. He filed, then withdrew it. Why? My guess. He wanted to know what was there. Got the company to do a free preliminary survey as part of lease negotiations. Once he had the information, he backed out. Kept the knowledge. Didn't let them access the land. Frank felt a surge of respect for the old man. Ray playing angles nobody saw. So what's actually down there? Marcus pulled up a technical report. According to Midwest Minerals Assessment, there's an estimated 12 to 18,000 kilograms of scandium oxide in the creek bed and surrounding strata. At current market rates, 4,000 per kilogram, that's $48 to $72 million in raw material. The number hit different hearing it out loud. Frank's coffee went cold in his hands. 72 million. Mining costs would eat a chunk, maybe 60, 70%. But you'd still be looking at 20 to 30 million in net proceeds if you leased the rights to a reputable company. Marcus closed the laptop. And that's conservative. Scandium prices have been climbing. Could be more. Frank sat back. The kitchen that had always felt small suddenly felt smaller, like the walls couldn't contain information this big. Your daddy knows. Mom does for sure. I found her search history. She's been researching mineral rights law, how to value deposits, what triggers disclosure requirements in property sales. She's been careful, though. Never put anything in writing. Never said it explicitly. And your dad? Marcus hesitated. I think Mom's been feeding him information without telling him how she got it. Pushing him to act fast, to get you to sell before you figure it out. Dad's greedy, but he's not usually smart about it. This has Mom's fingerprints all over it. And the second will? That I don't know. I've been trying to track down the notary, Deborah Marsh. She's not returning calls. But I found out she worked for a title company that Jennifer used for real estate deals. They know each other. The pieces were falling into place. Jennifer researching, Jennifer pushing, Jennifer with connections to a notary who'd stamp questionable documents. Can you prove any of this? Not yet, but I'm working on it. Marcus leaned forward. Here's the thing, Grandpa Frank. Friday's not the real deadline. They're just trying to rush you into deciding before you can mount a defense. If you say no, they'll file the probate challenge, but that takes months to process, which gives us time to gather evidence, build a case, maybe get Deborah Marsh to flip if she's facing fraud charges. You keep saying us. Marcus met his eyes. I'm staying. For a while anyway. Took a leave from work. Told Dad I'm here to help mediate the estate, which isn't totally a lie. Just didn't tell him which side I'm on. That's gonna blow up in your face. Probably. But I can't. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. I can't let them do this. Grandpa Ray left you this place for a reason. And I didn't show up for his funeral. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't honor him when I should have. This is the least I can do. Frank looked at his grandson, saw Martha in the set of his jaw, saw something of himself in the quiet determination. Your daddy's going to think you betrayed him. Maybe I am, or maybe I'm finally being loyal to the right things. Marcus stood, walked to the window. When I was 10, you taught me how to twist fence wire. You said there's a right way to do things, and the right way is the one that holds when tested. Dad never got that. He always wanted the fast way, the impressive way, the way that looked good from the outside. He's still your father. I know, and I love him. But he's wrong about this, and somebody needs to tell him that. Marcus turned back. Besides, you're family too, and you got a raw deal here. Someone should stand with you. The house settled around them. Outside, darkness had fallen complete. The only light was the kitchen overhead, yellow and warm, making the windows into mirrors that reflected two men who'd found each other again after years of drift. All right, Frank said. So what's the play? They spent the next 2 hours strategizing. Marcus laid out a timeline. Stall on Friday, file for independent property assessment, request mediation, by 3 to 4 weeks minimum. Meanwhile, he'd keep digging on Deborah Marsh, look for connections to Jennifer, maybe find the paper trail that proved the second will was fabricated or coerced. Around 10 p.m., headlights swept across the front of the house. A car Frank didn't recognize. They both went to the window. David got out. Then Jennifer. They looked angry. Shit, Marcus said. They tracked my rental car GPS. Dad pays for my cell plan, has access to location services. The knock on the door was hard, demanding. Frank opened it. David pushed past him, saw Marcus at the kitchen table, laptop open. His face went from angry to stunned to furious in about 2 seconds. What the hell are you doing here? Visiting Grandpa Frank. Visiting? You flew out here without telling me. To visit? David's eyes went to the laptop. The papers spread across the table. What is this? What are you two planning? We're not planning anything, Frank said. Marcus came to pay respects, to see the property. Jennifer moved past David, looked at the laptop screen before Marcus could close it. Her face went carefully blank. Geological surveys. How interesting. Just curious about the land, Marcus said evenly. Figured if it's being sold, someone should know what's actually there. What's there, Jennifer said coldly, is 40 acres of pasture and creek bed. Nothing special, nothing worth fighting over. Funny, Marcus said, because according to Midwest Mineral Resources, there's about $20 to $30 million worth of scandium down there. But you knew that, didn't you? The room went deadly quiet. David looked between them. What are you talking about? She didn't tell you? Marcus gestured to Jennifer. Your wife's been researching mineral rights for weeks. She knows there's rare earth deposits under that creek. That's why she's pushing so hard for a quick sale. David turned to Jennifer. Is that true? I did some research. Due diligence. That's responsible estate management. Due diligence or insider trading? Marcus stood. You knew what was there. You got Dad to pressure Grandpa Frank into selling before he could find out, and you were going to pocket the value. That's fraud, Mom. That's actual criminal fraud. Watch your mouth, David said, but his voice was uncertain now, looking at his wife like he was seeing her different. Tell him, Marcus pushed. Tell Dad about Deborah Marsh. Tell him how you got that second will notarized by a woman who works at the title company you use for all your real estate deals. Jennifer's face went white, then red. You little shit. You've been spying on me? No, I've been protecting my grandfather. There's a difference. David held up both hands. Everyone stop. Just stop. He looked at Frank. Is this true? About the mineral deposits? Frank met his son's eyes. Looks that way. And you didn't think to mention it? Just found out myself 3 days ago. David ran his hands through his hair, paced to the window and back. Jesus. Jesus Christ. He turned on Jennifer. Did you know about this when we made the settlement offer? I knew there was potential. I didn't know the exact potential. $75,000 when it's worth $20 million? David's voice climbed. Do you have any idea what this looks like? What this is? It's smart business, Jennifer shot back. He's one old man who doesn't know what he has. We're family. We have rights to this property regardless. That's not how rights work, Marcus interrupted. That's called exploitation, taking advantage of someone's trust, someone's grief, someone's ignorance to steal from them. We're not stealing. We're managing an asset that he can't. I'm standing right here, Frank said quietly. They all stopped, looked at him. I'm standing right here, Frank repeated. In my house, on my land, that my grandfather left to me. And you're all talking about me like I'm already dead or too stupid to understand what's happening. Dad, David started. No. You had your say. Now I'm talking. Frank's voice stayed level, calm. But something in it made them all shut up. You came into my house and told me I couldn't handle this, that I was incompetent, that I needed you to make decisions for me. You brought lawyers and real estate agents and surveyors, all planning out how to carve up something that wasn't yours to carve. We were trying to help, David said weakly. You were trying to steal. Maybe you didn't call it that. Maybe Jennifer had you convinced it was something else. But that's what it was. Theft dressed up in concern. Frank looked at his son. And the worst part, you made me believe it. For about 3 days, I actually thought maybe you were right. Maybe I was too old, too stupid, too broken to hold on to what Ray gave me. I never said. You said it every way but directly. Frank's hands weren't shaking. His voice wasn't rising. He'd never felt calmer in his life. So here's how this ends. You're going to leave my house. You're going to drop the probate challenge. And you're going to understand that this land is mine. Ray's decision. Final. And if we don't? Jennifer asked. Then Marcus and I take everything we know to the county prosecutor, fraud, elder exploitation, conspiracy, forgery, whichever charges stick. Jennifer laughed, sharp, brittle. You think you can prove any of that? I think I'm willing to spend every dime trying, and I think Carmen Rodriguez is willing to help me for free because she really hates people who exploit the elderly. Frank stepped toward the door, opened it. Now get out. David looked torn, lost, like a man standing between two different versions of who he was supposed to be. Dad, out. They left. Jennifer first, angry and rigid. David following, slower, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find words. Their car disappeared down the gravel drive. Frank and Marcus stood in the doorway, watching taillights fade. That could have gone better, Marcus said finally. Could have gone worse. Dad's gonna come back. He's gonna try to fix this, justify it, make himself the victim somehow. Let him try. Frank closed the door. Locked it. Tomorrow we call Carmen. Get ahead of this legal. Make sure they can't pull any more surprises. They cleaned up the papers. Made more coffee, neither of them needed. Sat in the living room where Ray used to watch the evening news and Martha used to work crossword puzzles. You think he'll forgive me? Marcus asked quietly. Dad, I mean. Eventually, maybe. People are complicated. What about you? What about me? Do you forgive me for not coming to the funeral? For staying away so long? Frank thought about that, about 5 years of distance, about Marcus choosing the path of least resistance because family was hard and disappointing fathers was harder. You came back when it mattered, Frank said. That counts for more than showing up when it's easy. Marcus's eyes went bright. He looked away, cleared his throat. Grandpa Ray would have liked that you stood up to them, the way you did just now. Your grandma would have liked that you stood with me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The old house creaked and settled around them. Outside, 40 acres lay dark, holding their secret safe for one more night. And somewhere in the space between what was lost and what might be found, two men who'd drifted found solid ground again. Family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was just who showed up when the test came. Thursday morning came cold and gray. Frank woke at 5:30 to find Marcus already in the kitchen, laptop open, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I understand that. But if you could just tell me whether the notary stamp was active on that date. Marcus listened, frustrated. Right, privacy, I get it. Thank you anyway. He hung up. Saw Frank in the doorway. County clerk won't confirm notary records over the phone. Says I need to submit a formal records request, which takes 3 to 5 business days. We don't have that long. I know. Marcus rubbed his eyes. I've been up since 4 trying to find another angle, called 6 different people. Everyone's hiding behind privacy laws or professional ethics. Frank poured coffee. Outside, the sky looked like rain. Carmen said to Stahl, buy time, not to prove everything by Friday. Yeah, but stalling only works if they believe we might have something. Right now, it's our word against theirs. And they've got a notarized document. The phone rang. Earl, what did you? Frank, you got company coming. David's truck just passed my place, headed your direction, and he's got someone with him, big guy in a suit. Thanks, Earl. Frank hung up. Told Marcus? Shit, he's bringing a lawyer, trying to intimidate us. Marcus closed his laptop. What do? We stand our ground, same as yesterday. But Frank felt the weight settling back on his chest. The brief confidence from last night cracking under morning light and the reality of men in suits with briefcases full of legal maneuvers he couldn't afford to counter. David's truck pulled up. A second car followed, a black sedan, professional, expensive. 2 men got out. David and a man in his 50s, gray suit, leather briefcase. He had the look of someone who'd won more fights than he'd lost. Frank met them on the porch. Marcus stood behind him. Dad, this is Richard Brackett. He's representing us in the estate matter. David's voice was formal. Careful. He wanted to meet you. Discuss options. Brackett extended a hand. Frank didn't take it. Mr. Holloway, I understand there's been some confusion about your father-in-law's final wishes. No confusion? Ray left me the farm. His lawyer confirmed it. Martin Wheeler is a small-town attorney handling basic wills and real estate transfers. I specialize in complex estate litigation. Brackett's smile was professional, cold. And I've reviewed both documents. The second will is ironclad, properly executed, properly witnessed, properly notarized. Any challenge you mount will fail, expensively. We'll take our chances. Will you? Because Mr. Wheeler isn't taking this case to trial. He told my office yesterday he's referring you to legal aid. And Ms. Rodriguez, the legal aid attorney, has a 90-day waiting list for new cases. You'll be in probate limbo for months, maybe years, while property taxes accumulate and the land sits unused. Brackett opened his briefcase. But there's a better way. He pulled out papers. Set them on the porch railing. This is a revised settlement offer. We've increased the buyout to $95,000 given the new information that's come to light. You sign today, you walk away with nearly 6 figures, no legal fees, no stress. You fight, you lose everything. Frank looked at the papers. 95,000. 20,000 more than yesterday's offer. They were scared. Brackett's presence proved it. The increased offer proved it. They knew about the scandium now. Knew Frank knew, and they were trying to close the deal before he could mount a real defense. And if I say no, then we file the probate challenge Monday morning. We depose you, depose your doctor, establish a pattern of declining mental capacity. I'm not declining. You're 67, recently widowed, living alone on frozen dinners. You forgot to pay property taxes for 3 years. You've let the property deteriorate. You exhibit classic signs of grief-related cognitive impairment. Brackett's voice was clinical, devastating. A judge will see an old man clinging to something he can't manage, while his family tries to help him make rational decisions. That's bullshit, Marcus said. That's a narrative. And juries love narratives. Brackett turned to Marcus. And you, young man, have inserted yourself into a family dispute where you have no legal standing. If you continue interfering, encouraging your grandfather to make poor decisions, we'll pursue civil action against you for undue influence. You can't. We can. And we will. Brackett closed his briefcase. Mr. Holloway, you have until 5 p.m. today. Sign the settlement or prepare for a very ugly, very expensive legal battle you cannot win. He walked back to his car. David lingered, wouldn't meet Frank's eyes. Dad, this is the last good offer. After today, it's war. Then I guess it's war. David flinched, opened his mouth, closed it, walked away. They drove off. Frank and Marcus stood on the porch in the cold morning, watching them go. He's bluffing, Marcus said. About the cognitive impairment thing. That's just scare tactics. Maybe, but he's right about the timeline. Legal aid has a waiting list. Martin can't take it to trial, and we don't have proof the second will is fake. We will. I just need more time. Time's the one thing we don't have. Frank went inside, sat at the kitchen table, stared at Ray's old percolator on the counter. Maybe I should just take the money. What? $95,000. That's more than I'd save in 10 years of living careful. I could buy a condo, live comfortable, not worry about taxes or maintenance or lawyers. And let them win? Let them steal $20 million out from under you? It's not stealing if I agree to it. Marcus sat down across from him. Grandpa Frank, listen to yourself. Yesterday, you threw them out. You stood up. You said this was yours by right. Yesterday I felt strong. Today I feel old. You're not old. You're tired. There's a difference. I'm 67 years old, Marcus. My wife is dead. My son hates me. I'm sitting in a house that needs $10,000 of repairs I can't afford, on land I don't know what to do with, fighting a legal battle that's going to bankrupt me even if I win. Frank's voice cracked. Maybe David's right. Maybe I am too old for this. Maybe sentiment is just another word for stupid. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, you know what I remember most about coming here as a kid? Frank didn't answer. Sunday mornings, Grandpa Ray would make pancakes. Grandma Martha would read the paper, and you'd sit on the porch with your coffee, just watching the sun come up. You never said much, just sat there peaceful, like you'd found something the rest of us were still looking for. Marcus leaned forward. I asked Grandpa Ray once what you were thinking about sitting out there so quiet. He said Frank's just being. Most folks spend their whole lives doing, never learn how to just be. Frank's throat went tight. This place isn't about the money. It's not even about beating Dad or proving Jennifer wrong. It's about having a place to be. A place that's yours because someone who loved you said it should be. Marcus's voice dropped. If you sign those papers, you won't just lose the land. You'll lose that. And I don't think $95,000 is worth what you'll feel at 3 a.m. when you realize you gave up the last place in the world where you belonged. Frank looked at his grandson, saw Martha's eyes, saw Ray's stubborn jaw, saw something of himself he'd thought was lost. They're going to tear me apart in court. Maybe. Or maybe they're not as strong as they're pretending. Maybe Brackett came here today because they're scared. Because they know if we get time to build a case, we'll find something. Marcus pulled out his phone. I've got one more lead, the title company where Deborah Marsh worked. I called them yesterday, got bounced around, but there's a woman there, office manager, who sounded uncomfortable when I mentioned Jennifer's name, like she knew something but couldn't say it. Can you get her to talk? I don't know, but I can try. Marcus stood. Give me today. Don't decide anything until tonight. Let me chase this down, see if I can find something solid. Frank wanted to say yes, wanted to believe one more day would make a difference. But he was tired. God, he was so tired. Okay, he said finally. You've got until tonight. Marcus grabbed his jacket, headed for the door, stopped. You know what else Grandpa Ray told me that morning? He said, your Grandpa Frank is stronger than he looks, stronger than he thinks. Someday, he's going to need to remember that. I think today's that someday. He left. The house went quiet. Frank sat at the table, staring at nothing. Through the window, he could see gray sky pressing down, threatening rain. His phone buzzed. Text from David. Dad, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're family. Frank stared at the words. Family. David was right. They were family. Blood, history, all the years that connected them. But what did family mean when it came with lawyers and ultimatums? When it measured love in settlement offers and property values? He thought about Martha. What she'd say if she were here. She'd probably tell him to be practical, to take the money, to not die on this hill just because Ray had left it to him. But then he remembered Martha on the porch, summer evenings, telling him, you're too quick to give in, Frank. Sometimes the right thing is the hard thing. Sometimes you have to stand even when it's uncomfortable. She'd been talking about a church committee vote, something small, but the principle was the same, stand even when it's uncomfortable. Frank walked to the window, looked out at 40 acres that had never been his until 3 weeks ago, but somehow felt like they'd always belonged to him. The creek, the fence line, the barn, the trees, all of it holding secrets, holding value, holding memories. He picked up his phone, dialed Carmen Rodriguez. Mr. Holloway? If we fight this, really fight it, what are our chances? She was quiet. Then, honestly, 30%. Maybe 40 if we catch a sympathetic judge. That's not good odds. No, it's not. But Mr. Holloway, I've been doing this work for 12 years. I've seen a lot of families destroy each other over money and property. And I'll tell you this, the people who walk away with their dignity intact aren't always the ones who win in court. Sometimes they're the ones who stand up, fight hard, and lose clean. That's supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. You asked me for odds. I gave them to you. But odds don't account for truth, or justice, or the fact that sometimes the system works the way it's supposed to. She paused. You want my real advice? Don't sign that settlement. Make them prove their case. Make them look your community in the eye and argue you're incompetent. Make it hard for them, because even if you lose, at least you'll know you didn't just roll over. And if I lose everything? Then you lose everything standing up, which is better than keeping something on your knees. Frank hung up, stood at the window as the first drops of rain started falling. At noon, Earl showed up with sandwiches from the diner. They ate in silence, watching rain streak the windows. Marcus told me about the deadline, Earl said finally. Yeah. You going to sign? Frank didn't answer. Didn't know how to answer. Ray used to say there's two kinds of tired, Earl continued. There's tired from working and tired from carrying. Working tired goes away when you rest. Carrying tired just gets heavier the longer you hold it. What's your point? My point is you've been carrying a lot of weight since Martha died. Carrying grief, carrying loneliness, carrying the feeling that you don't matter much anymore. And now David's piling more weight on, making you carry shame and doubt and the feeling you're too old to hold your own ground. Earl set down his sandwich. But that weight ain't yours to carry, it's his. And if you sign those papers, you're not setting down your burden, you're just proving you can't hold it. And you'll carry that feeling the rest of your life. I'm so tired, Earl. I know you are. But tired ain't the same as beaten. Not unless you decide it is. They finished lunch. Earl left. Frank sat alone in the house that had been Ray's, then became his by inheritance and was now the source of all his trouble. The clock ticked toward 5 p.m. His phone sat on the table, silent. Brackett's papers sat beside it. $95,000. One signature. One choice. One way out of all of this. Frank picked up a pen, put it down, picked it up again. The house creaked. Rain drummed the roof. The old percolator on the counter caught afternoon light, dull and familiar. At 4:30, Marcus called. "I got it." "Got what?" "Proof." The office manager at the title company, Carol, she finally talked. Jennifer paid Deborah Marsh $5,000 to notarize that will in August, 2 months after the date on the document. Deborah backdated the stamp. Carol saw the check. She didn't say anything because Jennifer threatened to ruin her career if she talked. Frank's heart started pounding. Will she testify? She will if we offer her immunity. She's scared of legal consequences. But Carmen can work that angle with the prosecutor. Marcus? We got them, Grandpa Frank. We can prove fraud. We can invalidate that second will. We can win this. Frank looked at the settlement papers, the pen in his hand. You're sure? I'm sure. Carol's meeting Carmen tomorrow morning. We're filing a formal complaint with the state bar and the county prosecutor. Jennifer and Deborah are going down, and once that happens, the probate challenge collapses. Frank set the pen down, pushed the papers away. Okay, he said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Okay, we fight. That's what I wanted to hear. I'll be home in an hour. We'll call Carmen, coordinate everything. Marcus hung up. Frank sat in the quiet house as rain fell and the clock ticked past 5. He didn't sign the papers. He'd made his choice. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Frank Holloway felt like he might actually win. The county courthouse smelled like floor wax and old wood. Frank had been here twice before, once for jury duty in 1989, once when Martha needed a marriage certificate copy for her passport application. Both times it had felt formal but friendly. Small-town bureaucracy with a human face. Today it felt like a battlefield. Carmen Rodriguez met them at the courthouse steps Tuesday morning. She was smaller than Frank expected, maybe 5'2", compact and fierce, wearing a suit that looked like she meant business. Her handshake was firm. Mr. Holloway, Marcus. She nodded to Earl, who'd insisted on coming. All right, here's where we are. Carol Wendt gave a sworn statement yesterday. Deborah Marsh was notified she's under investigation by the state attorney general's office, and the county prosecutor is very interested in Jennifer Holloway's involvement. What happens now? Frank asked. Now we go in there and we tell the judge everything. Probate hearing was supposed to be a formality. Approve the second will, move forward with estate division. Instead, we're going to blow it up. Carmen's smile was sharp. They're not expecting this. Brackett thinks he's walking in with a slam dunk. We're going to ruin his whole day. They went inside. The courtroom was smaller than Frank expected. Wood paneling, American flag in the corner. Judge's bench elevated, imposing. David and Jennifer were already there with Richard Brackett. They looked confident, prepared. Jennifer wore black, funeral colors, Frank noted, playing the grieving family member. When Jennifer saw Carol Wendt sitting with Carmen's legal team, her face went white. She leaned over to Brackett, whispered urgently. Brackett's expression shifted from confident to confused to concerned in rapid succession. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a woman in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She looked like someone's librarian grandmother until you saw her eyes, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. All rise for the Honorable Judge Morrison. They sat. The judge reviewed her notes. We're here regarding the estate of Raymond Ernest Holloway, deceased. Multiple claims to property at 1847 County Road 12. Mr. Brackett, you're representing the petitioners? Brackett stood. Yes, Your Honor. David and Jennifer Holloway. We're presenting a will dated June 2nd of this year, properly executed and notarized, which supersedes an earlier will and provides for equal distribution among heirs. And Mrs. Rodriguez, you're representing? Carmen stood. Franklin Holloway, Your Honor, the original beneficiary and rightful heir. We're challenging the validity of the June 2nd document on grounds of fraud, forgery, and elder exploitation. Judge Morrison's eyebrows went up slightly. Those are serious allegations. Yes, Your Honor. And we have evidence to support them. Proceed. Carmen laid it out methodically. The timeline didn't make sense. Ray meeting with clergy to discuss estate planning 2 weeks after allegedly changing his will. The notary stamp irregularities. Carol Went's testimony about witnessing a $5,000 payment from Jennifer to Deborah Marsh. Bank records showing the payment dated August 15th, 2 months after the will was supposedly executed. Brackett objected repeatedly. Hearsay. Speculation. Irrelevant. Judge Morrison overruled most of it. She was listening, really listening. Then Carmen called Carol Went to the stand. Carol was nervous, hands shaking, voice quiet, but she told the truth. I saw Mrs. Holloway, Jennifer, meet with Deborah Marsh in our office, August 15th. I remember because it was unusual. Deborah didn't usually take private meetings there. She worked from home mostly. What did you observe? Jennifer handed Deborah an envelope. Cash, I think. Deborah counted it quickly, then pulled out her notary stamp. Jennifer had papers with her. I couldn't see exactly what, but they looked official. Did you hear any conversation? Carol hesitated, looked at Jennifer. Jennifer's face was stone. I heard Jennifer say, just make sure the date matches what we discussed. And Deborah said, I know what I'm doing. The courtroom went completely silent. Brackett stood. Your Honor, this is circumstantial at best. There's no proof the document in question was, Mr. Brackett, sit down. I'll determine what constitutes proof. Judge Morrison turned to Carol. Ms. Went, did you report this interaction to anyone? No, ma'am. Jennifer said if I mentioned it to anyone, she'd make sure I lost my real estate license. She has connections with the state board. I believed her. But you're testifying now. Why? Carol's voice strengthened. Because it's wrong. I've been losing sleep over it. And when Mr. Holloway called asking questions, I realized I had to tell the truth, whatever it costs me. Judge Morrison made a note. Thank you, Miss Swent. You may step down. Next, Carmen called Deborah Marsh. Deborah had been subpoenaed. She looked terrified. Carmen didn't go easy on her. Miss Marsh, did you notarize a will for Raymond Holloway on June 2nd of this year? I don't recall specifically. Let me refresh your memory. Did Jennifer Holloway pay you $5,000 in August to backdate a notary stamp on a will? Deborah's lawyer, court-appointed, whispered to her urgently. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Your Honor, Carmen said, Ms. Marsh's refusal to answer is itself evidence. If she had nothing to hide, she'd deny the allegations. Noted, Judge Morrison said. Continue. Carmen presented the geological surveys, the mineral deposit reports. Evidence that Jennifer had been researching rare earth mining rights weeks before the second will appeared. The timeline shows clear motive, Your Honor. Jennifer Holloway discovered the property had significant mineral value. She orchestrated the creation of a fraudulent will to gain access to that value before Frank Holloway could discover it. This is textbook elder exploitation. Brackett tried to recover, called David to the stand. Mr. Holloway, were you aware of your wife's alleged actions? No, absolutely not. I thought the will was legitimate. I thought we were helping my father. Did you know about the mineral deposits? David hesitated. Too long. I learned about them recently, but I didn't. I wasn't trying to steal anything. I just wanted what was fair. Fair according to a document your wife manufactured, Carmen said on cross-examination. Mr. Holloway, did you question why your grandfather would use a lawyer 2 counties away instead of Martin Wheeler, who'd handled his affairs for 40 years? I trusted that he had his reasons. You trusted, or you didn't want to look too closely because it gave you what you wanted? Objection! Brackett stood, badgering the witness. Sustained. Ms. Rodriguez, rephrase. Did you at any point verify the authenticity of the second will before using it to pressure your father into selling? David's face reddened. I believed it was real. That's not what I asked. No, I didn't verify it. I trusted my wife. Carmen turned to Jennifer. Mrs. Holloway, would you like to testify? Jennifer's lawyer, she'd hired her own, separate from David's, stood quickly. My client declines to testify. Of course she does. Carmen turned to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The second will is fraudulent. It was created with the express purpose of defrauding Frank Holloway of his rightful inheritance. We request that it be invalidated, that the original will be upheld, and that this court refer Jennifer Holloway and Deborah Marsh to the county prosecutor for criminal investigation. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly, put them back on. I've heard enough. This court finds credible evidence of fraud in the execution and notarization of the document dated June 2nd. That will is hereby invalidated. The original will, dated February 18th and executed by attorney Martin Wheeler, is recognized as the valid last testament of Raymond Ernest Holloway. Jennifer stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're taking the word of some paralegal over a notarized legal document. Mrs. Holloway, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Judge Morrison's voice went cold. I'm also referring this matter to the county prosecutor and the State Bar Association. Miss Assault. Marsh, you should consider retaining criminal counsel. And Mrs. Holloway. She stared hard at Jennifer. If the allegations here are proven, you're looking at fraud charges, conspiracy, and possibly elder abuse. Those are felonies. Jennifer sat. Her face was white, then red, then white again. Judge Morrison continued. Furthermore, I'm ordering David and Jennifer Holloway to pay all legal fees incurred by Frank Holloway in defending this action. Mr. Brackett, your firm will provide a full accounting of fees, which will be split between your clients. Brackett stood. Your Honor, that's highly unusual. So is manufacturing a will. Motion granted. She banged the gavel. This estate is settled. Property at 1847 County Road 12 belongs to Franklin Robert Holloway. Free and clear. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus grabbed Frank's shoulder. Earl smiled, rare and genuine. Carmen packed her briefcase with satisfied efficiency. Across the aisle, David sat stunned. Jennifer stood, gathered her things with shaking hands, avoided everyone's eyes. Frank stood slowly. His legs felt weak. His heart was pounding. But he was standing. David caught his eye, opened his mouth, closed it. There were no words for this. For what had happened. For what had been revealed. Frank didn't say anything either. Just stood there, watching his son realize what he'd lost and what he'd become. Jennifer left first, heels clicking on courthouse marble. Her lawyer followed. David stood, moved toward Frank, stopped a few feet away. Dad, don't. I didn't know she was. I thought the will was real. I swear I thought. You thought what you wanted to think, because it was convenient. Frank's voice was quiet, steady. You wanted me out of the way, wanted the money, wanted to believe I was too old and too broken to hold my own ground. And you were wrong. I'm sorry. The words hung there. Maybe they were true. Maybe they weren't. I don't know what to do with that, Frank said. Maybe someday I'll figure out how to forgive this, but not today. David's eyes went red. He nodded once, turned, walked out. Brackett followed him, already on his phone, probably calculating damage control. Frank stood in the empty courtroom with Marcus and Earl and Carmen. The American flag hung still in the corner. Afternoon light came through high windows, dusty and golden. That was the hardest thing I've ever watched, Marcus said quietly. Seeing Dad realize what Mom did, what he helped her do. He made his choices, Earl said. Now he lives with them. Carmen shook Frank's hand. Congratulations, Mr. Holloway. The property is yours. Legally, officially, finally. Thank you for everything. Thank Papayas. He's the one who found the evidence. And thank Carol Went for having the courage to come forward. Carmen smiled. And thank yourself for not signing that settlement. A lot of people would have taken the easy money. After she left, the three of them stood on the courthouse steps. The day was clear, cold, November sun breaking through clouds. Frank felt strange, empty and full at the same time, like something heavy had been lifted, but left a space he didn't know how to fill. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." They drove back to the farm, Earl in his truck, Frank and Marcus in the old pickup. The land looked the same as it had this morning, as it had every morning, but somehow different now. Official. Settled. His. That night they sat on the porch, all three of them, coffee in hand, watching sunset paint the fields gold and red. "Ray would have enjoyed that," Earl said. Watching Jennifer's face when Carol testified. "Ray would have enjoyed not having to go through it at all," Frank said. "Would have enjoyed just living here in peace. Peace comes after battle, not instead of it." Earl stood, stretched. "I'm heading home. You two need anything, holler?" After Earl left, Frank and Marcus sat in the quiet. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. Haven't thought past today. You'll need to deal with the mineral rights eventually. Figure out if you want to lease them, sell them, develop them yourself. Eventually." Frank sipped cold coffee. "But not tonight." They sat until full dark. The porch board creaked when they finally stood up. Inside, the house felt different. Not empty anymore. Not waiting. Just home. Frank slept that night better than he had in months. No dreams, no waking at 3 a.m. Just deep, solid sleep. And when he woke at dawn, made coffee in Ray's old percolator, and stood at the window watching sunrise over 40 acres that were legally, officially, finally his, Frank Holloway felt like himself again, like a man who'd been tested and hadn't broken, like someone who mattered. 3 weeks after the hearing, Frank stood at the creek bed with Marcus and a man in a hard hat named Tom Chen. Tom worked for Midwest Mineral Resources, the same company Ray had contacted back in 2019. "Your grandfather was smart," Tom said, kneeling by the water, examining rust-colored rocks. "He got us to do a preliminary survey for free, then backed out before we could lock in unfavorable terms. Left the door open for future negotiation." "What kind of terms are we talking about?" Marcus asked. Tom pulled out a tablet, showed them projections. "Based on our original assessment and current market prices, we'd offer a 20-year lease, 12% royalty on extracted scandium, minimal surface disruption. Most of the work happens underground. We estimate 8 to 12 million in royalties over the life of the lease." 8 to 12 million. The number still didn't feel real. "And the land stays mine?" Frank asked. "Completely. We access only the mineral rights. You retain surface rights, water rights, everything else. We're required to restore the land when extraction is complete." Frank looked at the creek. The same water where he'd fished with Ray as a boy, where he'd taught Marcus to skip stones, where Ray had stood countless mornings, knowing what lay beneath, but keeping it quiet, keeping it safe. "I need to think about it." "Of course. Take your time." Tom handed him a business card. "When you're ready, call me. We'll structure something that works for everyone." After Tom left, Frank and Marcus walked the fence line. November had stripped the trees bare, made the 40 acres look bigger somehow, more honest. "You going to do it?" Marcus asked. "The lease?" "Probably. Eventually. Money like that could set up a nice life. Set you up too, if you wanted." "I don't need setting up." "You might want to start a family someday. Buy a house. This could help with that." Marcus stopped walking. "Are you offering me money?" "I'm offering you a future, if you want it." "What I want," Marcus said carefully, "is to know you're okay, that you're not sitting in this house alone, eating frozen dinners, waiting for the next crisis." "I'm okay." "Are you?" Frank considered that. Was he okay? The legal battle was over. The property was his. The mineral rights could secure his financial future. All the external problems were solved. But inside was complicated. "I miss your grandmother," Frank said finally. "Every day. I miss your granddad too, though he'd been gone from my life for years before he actually died. And I miss having family that feels like family instead of a legal proceeding. You've got me." "I know, and I'm grateful for that. But Marcus, you can't fix everything. You can't move back here and be my caretaker and put your life on hold because you feel guilty about the funeral. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? Marcus kicked at a fence post. Maybe a little, but also, I like it here. The city's exhausting. The job's fine, but it's not. He paused, searching for words. It's not meaningful. I analyze data for highway projects and housing developments. It pays well, but it doesn't matter. Not really. What would matter? I don't know. Something with land. Conservation, maybe. Sustainable development. Using my skills for something that lasts. Marcus looked out at the property. Grandpa Ray made this place last. Held on to it when he could have sold. Protected it from people who'd have strip-mined it and moved on. That matters. Frank heard something in his grandson's voice. Something that sounded like purpose looking for a place to land. You want to stay? I'm thinking about it. There's some GIS contract work I could do remote. And if we develop the mineral rights, someone needs to oversee it. Make sure they're not cutting corners or damaging the land. That could be a job. Living here long term, that's different from visiting. I know, but maybe different is what I need. Marcus turned to face him. And honestly, Grandpa Frank, I think you could use the company, not because you can't handle things, but because nobody should have to handle everything alone. Frank thought about that. About mornings that might include another coffee cup. About evenings with conversation instead of silence. About someone to share the sunrise with, to split the work with, to just be with. Your daddy's not going to like it. Dad's got bigger problems than me right now. That was true. David and Jennifer had separated 2 weeks ago. David moved into an apartment in town. Jennifer was staying with her sister 3 counties over. The criminal investigation was ongoing. Their marriage, whatever it had been, was probably over. Frank felt complicated things about that. Sad for David. Angry at what had been done. Relieved it was over. Guilty for feeling relieved. If you stay, Frank said, you stay because you want to, not because you think I need saving. Deal. They shook on it. Marcus's grip was firm. Steady. The handshake of a man who knew his own mind. That evening, Helen Pritchard stopped by with a casserole. Heard the good news about the court case. Thought you might want something home-cooked. Helen, you didn't have to. Hush. I wanted to. She set it on the counter, looked around at the kitchen that was cleaner than it had been in months. Place looks good. You doing okay? Getting there. Good. Because Frank Holloway, you gave this whole town something we needed. Proof that doing the right thing still counts for something. That standing up to people who think they can push you around actually works sometimes. She patted his arm. Ray would be proud. Martha, too. After she left, Frank reheated the casserole. He and Marcus ate at the table, like people did, like family did. I got a letter from Dad, Marcus said during dinner. Yeah? Yeah. It was an apology, sort of more of an explanation about how he got caught up in Mom's schemes, how he didn't realize what she was doing, how he's sorry for how it all went down. You believe him? Some of it. I think he genuinely didn't know Mom was manufacturing evidence. But I also think he was happy to believe you were incompetent because it gave him permission to take what he wanted. Marcus set down his fork. He asked if I'd meet him for coffee. Talk things through. You going to? I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. But not yet. He needs to sit with what he did. Figure out who he wants to be. Frank understood that. The need for space, for time, for consequences to mean something. He's still your father. I know, but you're still my grandfather. And right now, that matters more. Frank's throat went tight. He nodded, didn't trust himself to speak. That Saturday, Earl came over with fence posts and wire. Thought we'd fix that northwest section, getting loose. They worked all morning, Frank, Marcus, Earl, stretching wire, setting posts, doing the work that held things together. The November air was cold, the work was hard, but it felt right, purposeful. Around noon, Earl straightened, rubbed his back. You know what Ray told me once? He said a good fence makes a good life. Not because it keeps people out, but because it shows you know what's yours and you're willing to maintain it. Ray said a lot of things, Frank observed. Yeah, but he was right about most of them. Earl tested the tension on the wire. This'll hold now. Another 10 years. Easy. 10 years. Frank would be 77. Marcus would be 38. The scandium would be mostly extracted. The land would still be here, held by the fence they were mending right now. That night, Frank made a phone call he'd been avoiding. David answered on the third ring. Dad? Yeah, it's me. Silence. Then, how are you? I'm okay. Property's officially mine. Mineral company wants to lease. Marcus is thinking about staying on. I heard. About Marcus, I mean. He told me. David's voice was strained. I'm glad he's there. Glad you have company. David, I know what you're going to say. That I screwed up. That I let Jennifer manipulate me. That I should have stood by you instead of... His voice cracked. I know all of it, Dad. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. Frank stared out the window at darkness settling over 40 acres. I believe you're sorry. I'm just not sure what to do with that yet. I understand. Maybe someday we can, I don't know, figure out how to be family again. But that's going to take time. And it's going to take you showing me you've changed, not just telling me. I'll do that, however long it takes. Okay then. Dad, one more thing. I've been going to therapy. Trying to figure out why I did what I did. Why I was so quick to believe you couldn't handle things. David took a shaky breath. I think I spent my whole life comparing myself to you and Granddad Ray. All that quiet strength, that integrity, that contentment with simple things, I could never measure up. So I told myself you were just settling, that I was better because I wanted more. You are better at some things, but not at the things that matter. Not at being loyal, not at keeping my word, not at... David's voice broke. Not at being the kind of son you deserved. Frank felt something shift in his chest. Something like grief, but also like possibility. We can't fix everything tonight, David. I know. But maybe we can start slow, careful, see what's salvageable. I'd like that. They hung up. Frank sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, feeling things he couldn't name. Loss and hope and sadness and relief all tangled together. Marcus came in, flipped on the light. You okay? Yeah, talk to your dad. How'd it go? About as well as it could, I guess. Frank stood, stretched. He's got a long road ahead. We all do. But we're on it. That's something. December came cold and clear. Frank signed the mineral lease, 12% royalties, minimal surface disruption, 20-year term. The advance payment was enough to fix the roof, replace the furnace, and set up a modest trust for Marcus. Marcus officially moved in, turned Ray's old office into his workspace, set up computers and monitors, started taking contract work. Some mornings Frank would wake to hear Marcus on conference calls, talking about topographical surveys and watershed management. It was good sound, living sound. Earl came over most afternoons. They'd work on something. The barn, the fence, the garden beds Martha had loved. Small projects that didn't need doing, but were worth doing anyway. The town slowly learned the story. How Jennifer had tried to steal the property. How Frank had stood his ground. How Marcus had come home. People nodded when they saw Frank in the diner now. Respect in their eyes. Recognition. Not pity. Not anymore. On Christmas Eve, Marcus asked, You want to invite Dad for dinner? Frank thought about that, about forgiveness and family, and what it meant to move forward. Maybe New Year's, he said. Let's get through the holidays first. They had a quiet Christmas, just the two of them and Earl. Turkey from the grocery store, sides Helen Pritchard insisted on providing. They ate at the table Ray had built, told stories about Ray and Martha, laughed at things that weren't that funny but felt good to laugh at anyway. After Earl left, Frank and Marcus sat on the porch despite the cold, coffee in hand. the stars clear and bright in the winter sky. "This was a good day," Marcus said. "Yeah, it was. Grandpa Frank, thank you for letting me stay, for trusting me when things got complicated. You earned that trust. I'm going to call Dad tomorrow, wish him Merry Christmas. Maybe set up that New Year's dinner." Frank nodded. "That's probably right." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind Ray and Earl used to share, the kind that came from understanding you didn't always need words to communicate what mattered. The porch board creaked when they finally stood. Same third board, same creak. Frank didn't fix it, never would. Some imperfections were worth keeping. Inside, the house was warm. Marcus went to his room. His room now, not just Ray's old office. Frank cleaned up the kitchen, put away dishes, turned off lights. Before bed, he stood at the window looking out at 40 acres that had cost him more than he'd expected, but given him back something he'd lost. Purpose. Family. Proof that quiet strength mattered. Ray's voice came back to him. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Frankie." "I know, Ray," Frank said to the empty room. "I know that now." He slept deeply that night, and when he woke to Christmas morning sun painting everything gold, Frank Holloway felt something he hadn't felt since Martha died. He felt home, not just in a place, but in himself. And that, he thought, was the gift Ray had really left him. Not the land, not the money, but the chance to discover he'd been strong enough all along. He just needed to be tested to believe it. Spring came to the 40 acres the way it always had. Slow, then sudden. One day the trees were bare, and the next they were hazed with green. The creek ran high with snowmelt. The earth smelled like possibility. Frank stood on the porch at dawn, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over land that was his by right and by battle. The third board creaked under his feet, familiar, faithful, unchanged. Marcus was still sleeping. The boy, the man, had been up late on a conference call with a conservation group in Montana, something about watershed mapping. Frank had heard him laughing through the walls, heard the enthusiasm in his voice, the sound of someone who'd found work that mattered. Earl's truck would appear around 8, same as it had every morning for 43 years. They'd work on the garden beds today, plant what Martha used to plant, tomatoes and peppers and green beans, not because Frank needed the vegetables, but because some traditions were worth keeping. David was coming for Sunday dinner. They'd been doing that for 3 months now, every other week, careful and awkward at first, getting easier. David had filed for divorce, started therapy, stopped wearing the expensive cologne. Small changes, but they were something. He'd never said the right words. Maybe there weren't right words for what had happened. But he showed up. On time. Sober. Present. And slowly, very slowly, Frank was learning how to let him back in. Not all the way. Not yet. Maybe not ever completely, but enough. Jennifer was facing criminal charges, fraud, conspiracy, elder exploitation. The trial was set for fall. Frank tried not to feel satisfaction about that. Mostly succeeded. She'd made her choices. Now she'd live with the consequences. The mineral lease was paying out quarterly. More money than Frank knew what to do with. He'd set up the trust for Marcus, donated to the church building fund, helped Earl repair his barn, put the rest in savings for a future he couldn't quite picture yet, but knew might include things like medical bills and long-term care and all the realities of getting old. But that was tomorrow's worry. Today was just sunrise and coffee and the creak of a porch board under 77-year-old feet that still carried him where he needed to go. Frank thought about Ray. About the chess game the old man had played from beyond the grave. About testing someone to see if they'd find their strength before handing them the reward. It had been cruel, in a way, letting Frank struggle, letting him doubt, letting him come within inches of giving up. But it had also been the greatest gift Ray could have given, because Frank had learned something about himself he wouldn't have learned any other way. He'd learned he could stand when everyone expected him to fall. He'd learned quiet strength wasn't weakness. It was power held in reserve, deployed when it mattered most. He'd learned that mattering wasn't about being chosen by the people who should love you. It was about choosing who you became when tested. And he'd learned that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was a grandson who flew home when it would have been easier to stay away. Sometimes it was a neighbor who paid taxes in secret and kept faith for 15 years. Sometimes it was a church secretary who remembered conversations and a lawyer who fought for free because the fight was right. Sometimes family was just the people who showed up. The sun climbed higher. Lights spilled across the fields, across the creek bed that held its secret wealth, across the fence line where Frank and Marcus had stretched new wire just last week. Inside, Frank heard Marcus moving around. Coffee machine starting. The small sounds of another person sharing space. Not Martha. Never Martha again. But someone. Company. Life continuing in the house that had felt empty for so long. Frank finished his coffee, set the cup on the railing, stood there a moment longer, just being. Most folks spend their whole lives doing, Ray used to say, never learn how to just be. Frank was learning, 77 years old, and he was finally learning. He went inside. Marcus was at the table with his laptop, already working. Morning, Grandpa Frank. Morning. You want breakfast? I can make it. I know you can. I'm asking if you want me to. Marcus looked up, smiled. Yeah, that'd be nice. Frank made eggs and toast. Real food. They ate together, talking about the day ahead, the garden they'd plant, the fence Earl wanted to check, the mundane, beautiful, ordinary things that made up a life. And Frank thought, this. This is what Ray wanted me to have. Not money, not victory over enemies. Just this. A morning, a table, someone to share breakfast with. Proof that he'd been strong enough to hold on to what mattered. After breakfast, Marcus headed out to meet with the mining company's site manager. Frank cleaned the kitchen, washed the dishes by hand the way Martha had always done. Through the window, he could see Earl's truck coming up the drive, right on time, right where he belonged. Frank dried his hands, headed for the door, stopped at the threshold. Behind him, a house full of memories and new beginnings. Ahead, 40 acres and a friend and work that needed doing. And beneath it all, the knowledge that he'd been tested and hadn't broken. That quiet strength held when noise failed. That keeping your word mattered, even when it cost you everything. Frank stepped onto the porch. The third board creaked. He smiled. Some sounds were worth keeping, some lessons were worth learning. And some fights, even the hard ones, the lonely ones, the ones that left scars, were worth winning, not because of what you gained, but because of who you became in the fighting. Earl got out of his truck, raised a hand in greeting. Frank raised one back, and together, they walked toward the garden beds and the day's work and the life that kept unfolding, one morning at a time. Ray would have liked this, Frank thought. Martha, too. And maybe, just maybe, they'd have been proud of the man who'd finally learned to stand when the world expected him to fall. The sun climbed higher. The coffee was good. And Frank Holloway, at 77 years old, finally understood what his grandfather had been trying to teach him all along. Strength wasn't about never feeling tired. It was about standing anyway. And home wasn't a place. It was proof that you mattered, that you'd always mattered, that you'd been strong enough all along. You just needed to fight for it to believe it.